Well, we'd like to welcome into the studio today a couple of people that are going to talk about State Question 832. We have Dave Bond and Rick Farmer from the Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs. Good morning, gentlemen.
Todd, thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate both of you coming in. All right, so State Question 832, it is the only state question on the June primary ballot, and its purpose is to raise the minimum wage, but it's not a one-time raise of the minimum wage. This thing could go on and on and on. Kind of give us the details.
Todd, thank you so much. It is really important for folks to be aware that if State Question 832 passes in June, if more people vote yes than no, then California's job-killing, destructive minimum wage policy will be imposed on small businesses all across the state of Oklahoma. There's a line that the folks pushing for State Question 832 like to say, well, it doesn't apply to small businesses with less than 10 employees. Well, that's true unless that small business does gross business, and that's the phrase, not net profits or gross profits, but gross business of $100,000 or more a year. That's going to cover just about any business in the state of Oklahoma that has employees. That's going to cover most snow cone stands.
I was going to say, yeah.
So if you're a small business in the state of Oklahoma and you have employees, this will apply directly to you.
And fireworks stands, Dave.
Yes.
Fourth of July is coming, right?
Yes, fireworks stands, absolutely.
That's another good point because it is coming up on that season. Because, first of all, the thing that I always point out, I don't know of anybody that is paying in western Oklahoma minimum wage for any job right now. All I hear from my fellow employers out there is we can't find help. We keep raising the amount to bring in people. So why is there even a need for this?
We want people to do well. We want people to be able to climb the economic ladder. But the typical outcome for states that have put something like this in place. So there are very few states around the country who've had something this aggressive as State Question 832 for 10 years or more. Really, it's just the West Coast states, California, Oregon, and Washington. And people can say, well, California's massive. How can you compare us to California? Well, the results have been really bad. But if you want to go to smaller states, Oregon has a population almost identical to Oklahoma's. Washington State's is not much bigger. The city of Seattle in particular, the Seattle Metro, is almost exactly the same population as Oklahoma. It's been a disaster in those places. And so the result, for instance, for people in Seattle, I'm glad we took Seattle's basketball team, but I think we need to leave them with something, and I think we should leave them with the way they treat small businesses. The average take-home pay for folks at the low end of the pay scale, because that's who this is supposed to help, right? When you raise the minimum wage, that's who we're trying to help. The average take-home pay for those people has gone down.
Wow.
In the average that they take home each month. It's somewhere between $75 and $150 less that they're taking in each month, because the small businesses there, in order to stay open so that everybody doesn't lose their job, they're having to slash people's hours. And so they're getting paid more per hour, and that's great, but then they're slashing people's hours just to make it all work. And the big reason why is what you alluded to a minute ago. Yes, State Question 832 more than doubles the minimum wage over the next 2.5 years from its current level to $15 an hour. But then it keeps going after it hits $15 an hour. It will continue to increase year after year after year based on one of the federal government's consumer price inflation indexes, and it's the one tied to urban wage earners. And so it's not based off the cost of living in Oklahoma. Oklahoma City is included in that calculation, but it makes up less than 1% of the calculation. But the vast majority of how it's calculated is what is the cost of living year to year in California, in New York, in Chicago, in New Jersey, in Philadelphia, in Miami, Seattle, really high-cost places. Oklahoma, by most measurements, has the lowest cost of living in America, but we're going to base it off the cost of living in all those other places. That load that the small business has to carry is going to be based off the cost of living in New York City, where the politicians keep doing things to raise the cost of living, on California, where the politicians keep doing things to raise the cost of living. That's what will determine what a small business owner in western Oklahoma has to deal with.
Well, the proponents of this say, well, look, right now the minimum wage isn't a living wage. Groceries have gone up. Gas has gone up. We've got to do something to help these people. But Was minimum wage intended to be an adult wage anyway as a full-time employee? Is anybody really making that as a full-time employee?
A lot of folks differ about what the original intent of minimum wage was. I do think over the course of my life what minimum wage has been is that entry-level stepping stone job. That could be for young people. That could be for second chance people. There's a growing number of businesses around Oklahoma who, and I think this is a wonderful thing, are focused on second chance hiring, folks who've been in prison and are trying to get back into a productive life. That's an incredibly good thing.
That's how we hired Harold Wright for a number of years after his prisons.
I've heard that story. But this will make that much more cost prohibitive for a lot of seniors who, in their retirement years, their way of staying active and supplementing Social Security is to have a part-time job. This is a killer for part-time jobs and entry-level jobs. But both of my kids, 2 boys, are teenagers right now. As of December, we have 2 teenagers in our household. I want this to continue to be a state where entry-level work is plentiful for them and their peers and for the ones who come after. And what they've seen in the states that have had this in place for a decade or more is that's becoming less and less the case. Those entry-level jobs are the ones that get cut because when you have 2 employees as a small business owner or even a big business owner that you have to choose from, or you can't keep the doors open, who are you going to cut? The one with less experience, the one who's more expendable. That's that entry-level person, and that's why those are the jobs most at risk.
Rick?
We should also talk about the exemptions that are currently in the law that are being taken away because, again, this applies to those entry-level positions. So currently, the law says that high school people under the age of 18 are exempt. Part-time employees are exempt. Farm workers are exempt. Feed store workers are exempt. All of those things are listed in the law as currently exempt. Well, this proposal takes those exemptions away. So not only does it raise it to unsustainable level that employers are not going to want to employ young people because I don't want to pay a kid $15 an hour who doesn't really have any skills, but those exemptions are going to go away. So they're going to be required to pay them that.
Well, think of all the farmers out there that just during harvest time, they hire some local, and sometimes they're 15 years old. I mean, you're going to have to pay them $15 an hour, even though they've never worked before.
It treats a teenager with 0 skills and 0 job experience the same as it treats a single mother who's providing for a family of 4 and is the sole breadwinner and has been working for 20 years. It treats those people as though they are exactly the same. They are not exactly the same. It also treats a small business in western Oklahoma like it's in downtown Tulsa, and that its employees have the same cost of living pressures on them that you would if you lived in anywhere near downtown Tulsa. These are just pretty ridiculous things. And that continual escalator year after year after year, because remember, it doesn't stop at $15. It keeps going up year after year after year, not based off the cost of living in Oklahoma. The cost of living in Weatherford or Cordell or Clinton or Enid or Kingfisher or Woodward or Elk City, none of those places are factored into the escalator on this. Tulsa isn't factored in. Ardmore, Lawton, Ponca City, none of those places. It's what's the cost of living increase in New York City or Chicago or San Francisco or L.A. That's just ridiculous. It's a whole lot more than $15 an hour. If it was just a $15 an hour minimum wage and none of the other rules changed, teenagers were still not considered the same as people who have been working for 20 years, part-time could still be a thing, that would be a much different conversation. I think a lot of people would have a lot easier time voting yes. But it's all these other things, and it's the continued escalation that a small business owner has to carry. That's what makes it so bad for our state.
Dave Bond and Rick Farmer from OCPA talking about State Question 832, which is trying to raise the minimum wage. You brought up one really important part because it's not just the wage itself, it's all the other stuff. Well, let's hearken back to another state question that was on a June primary, and that was medical marijuana. And all we heard is, "Oh, this is just to help cancer patients, get some gummies and stuff to help with their symptoms." But we didn't pay attention to the fine print and all of that. And then look how crazy that's been. The same people that are behind writing that are basically the same outside groups that are writing this and putting in what I call the butt sandwiches in here. It's raising the minimum wage, but we added this, but we mandated this, but.
Yeah, it is interesting how a lot of these state questions that we've seen in our state over the past 8 to 10 years are funded by out-of-state money. 832, the minimum wage state question, the seed money, and most of the money actually along the way for that effort has come from out-of-state East Coast labor unions.
Yeah.
It's, there was another state question that was being pushed for earlier this year that was being funded by a group out of New York City. It is, relatively speaking, Oklahoma has a cheap media market, and so we have seen a lot of out-of-state interests come in here and try to test an idea. And, well, if we could pass it here, then we could pass it in Texas or Tennessee or someplace like that. And that is, I think this is another example of that as well. And that's why they're probably really not trying to fashion something that would make sense for Oklahoma. If it just went to $15, it would make more sense for Oklahoma.
Yeah.
If it went up year after year, but it was based off the cost of living in Oklahoma as opposed to New York City, maybe that would make sense for Oklahoma. If it kept part-time employee rules in place, if it kept rules in place for teenage employees and entry-level employees, it might make more sense. It throws all of that stuff out the window.
Well, and in the past, when there has been an increase in minimum wage that's done by the state, it's been like $1 or something like that. I mean, you're going, because doesn't the first year it goes like to 12 and then it gets to 15 after a couple of years. I mean, that's almost doubling. That doesn't even make sense.
Right. It would, if it passes this June, it would more than double. It would go to $12 this coming January, $13.50 in January of 2028, and then $15 in January of 2029 for every small business in the state.
Yeah.
Regardless of where in the state you are, it applies in the Panhandle the same as it does in Oklahoma City. It applies everywhere in western Oklahoma the same as it does in Tulsa. It's very equal opportunity and fair, I suppose, that way. But it's treating all these different types of business. It applies regardless of industry. It could be a lawnmower repair shop, or it could be an Amazon fulfillment center.
Yeah. And
they are treated like they are exactly the same thing. It treats every small business in Oklahoma like it's a McDonald's in California.
Couple of other points, it's a job killer. We've already seen that in California. Automation, AI is taking over more things too. Some of these lower skilled jobs are going to go away. Okay, how many of my listeners hate self-checkouts? I would bet 60% of our audience hates that. How about kiosks? I went to buy some barbecue this weekend at a local convenience store. They added in a kiosk, and they had people behind the counter still, but they wanted you to order by the kiosk. And I'm a pretty tech-savvy person, but the kiosk didn't have all the things that I wanted to do. Hey, I want extra cheese on this. There wasn't a button for that. So I had to end up calling employees, and they acted like they were a little mad that they had to come out and help. And we saw that. I remember Carl's Jr., and they're out of business now, by the way. Here, they put in kiosks about 10 years ago, and they took them out within 3 months because customers hated them.
Yeah, if anyone's been to a McDonald's in California anytime recently, we were there a little over a year ago. It is a different experience than going to a McDonald's in Oklahoma.
Yeah,
out there you're dealing with machines. Here you're dealing with people, which means those people have jobs that out in California they don't have. And so for the small business, they're more likely to cut somebody's hours because I don't know a small business owner who's not going to do everything within their power for as long as it takes to make it work to keep a good employee.
Yeah.
That is, without that good employee, that small business goes under. So they're going to bend over backwards to try to make it work. Eventually, that's why we look at these states that have been doing it for 10 years or more, like Oregon and Washington and California, so you can really see that eventually they run out of time and that doesn't work, but they do try. On the big business side, these are national and international corporations with shareholders that they answer to. They have to maximize profit margins as best they can. And at some point, they don't have a choice. If it becomes noticeably less expensive for them to employ a kiosk instead of a human, that is what they are going to do. Often this type of thing benefits the big guys, the Walmarts and the McDonald's and the Amazons, at the expense of the small business.
Yeah, because they can afford it.
Right. They're already doing the automation. They can do automation at scale. And so the cost bump to them is not a big deal. They've probably got a few more sitting in the warehouse anyway that they can just roll out. It's just up to the local franchisor a lot of times to say, okay, I'm ready for my kiosk now.
Yeah.
But that replaces employees. Those are real jobs. Those are entry-level stepping stone jobs that people in Oklahoma, maybe they're younger people, maybe they're second chance people. There's a lot of others. Maybe they're a mom whose kids just finally finished high school and they're out of home now, and that mom needs a stepping stone job to get back into the workforce. There's all sorts of situations in which entry-level stepping stone jobs are essential to a state's economy, to a city's economy. This is a killer, most of all for those kinds of jobs. And then there's the price side. We really haven't talked about prices.
Yeah.
And people could say, well, a hamburger costs the same in Oklahoma as it does in California. It doesn't.
No.
So the states that have had this in place for 10 years or more, those three West Coast states, Oregon and California and Washington, those are the three highest priced states in the continental U.S. for groceries and food and restaurants, highest in the country. Oklahoma is one of the three lowest priced states in the country for food and groceries and restaurants. That's real. That's really, really real. And then on other essential areas of cost that most people, really, I think everybody deals with every day, so gas to get to your job, get your kids to school, all those things. Housing, whether you're trying to buy a house or rent an apartment or anything in between. Utilities, to keep the lights on and keep your home cooled and heated. Child care, all of those things, the average price in those states that have been doing something like State Question 832 for 10 years or more, the prices are double or more in those states compared to what folks are paying here in Oklahoma.
Well, and that's just basic economics that so many people don't think about. When costs go up to a business, they pass it on to the consumer. They don't just eat it. They can't afford to do that.
No.
If you raise their taxes, they're going to raise the price.
Yep.
Fuel goes up, as you mentioned. We're paying more,
Yep.
for burgers and fries because of that. Imagine doing this $15 minimum wage and see what that does to your burger. The $1.99 menu at Sonic, I bet you goes away. The $2 value menu at McDonald's goes away. There won't be value meals anymore.
They won't have a choice. Yeah. These are just real costs that they have to, or the only other balance they might be able to do to keep those costs down is just more kiosk, more automation, less human cost. Humans are expensive to employ. It's what you're paying them. It's also what you're having to pay as an employer to the government for FICA and all those other things. And then if you try to provide any benefits at all, which I think most good employers desperately try to do, at least some health care or something like that, all of that adds up. And every time you increase the wage for a job where that person just needs an entry-level stepping stone job and then they'll advance to something else, that kind of cost becomes unsustainable. So they're either letting people go or they're cutting their hours. And again, the average take-home pay in some of these places has actually gone down for the people it was supposed to help. It's actually gone down.
We're talking with David Bond and Rick Farmer from the Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs. We're visiting about State Question 832. Back with more right after this.
State Representative Anthony Moore.
Rick Cook tells it like it is, and he doesn't back down. He's tough. He's direct. Rick doesn't care about political games. He cares about getting results and standing up for our values. I need Rick fighting right along beside me in the Oklahoma legislature.
Conservative businessman Rick Cook will fight to secure the border, protect rural Oklahoma, and stand with President Trump. Rick Cook for State Senate. Tough leadership, real results.
Hi, I'm Rick Cook. Help me make Western Oklahoma great again. Paid for by Friends of Rick Cook, 2026.
Save now during the Memorial Day sale at Todd Fest.
Long live the lazy.
Yeah, you got lots of lazy boys here.
Yeah, we got 90 lazy boys in stock on the floor to choose from, and they're all marked down for this sale.
I understand you probably got the largest selection here in Western Oklahoma.
We are the largest lazy boy dealer in Western Oklahoma. That's right.
So, folks, 12 months, same as cash. That means nothing down, no interest for 12 months, folks. So come on into Todd Fest. Todd Fest on the main corner in downtown Weatherford. Make it easy.
When it comes to your business being noticed, it's Davis Printing. Sure, they do business cards, envelopes, brochures, newsletters, and carbonless forms, but they go way beyond print. Need mailing solutions, postcards, letters, invoices, quarterly reports? They have it covered. Want to stand out? Banners, wall wraps, monument signs, channel letters, window graphics, and even digital signs. And don't forget the swag. Shirts, pins, promo gear, all personalized. All across Oklahoma, Davis Printing delivers. Email davisprinting@att.net, and let's get to work.
What are you waiting for? If you're anything like me, that question keeps you up at night. So don't wait for someone else's green light. Do the things you love right now at Western Technology Center. We'll get you out of the classroom and into the real world with hands-on experience in whatever feeds your fire. So get after it. Oklahoma needs more doers, and doers don't wait. Western Technology Center, powered by Oklahoma Career Tech.
Welcome back to the Western Oklahoma Wake Up Show, brought to you by Priority Home Medical Equipment. Our guests this morning, Dave Bond and Rick Farmer from the OCPA. We are talking about State Question 832, which will appear on the June 16th primary ballot. It's a proposal to raise the minimum wage within a couple of years to $15 an hour. Now, one other question I have. If you raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, what happens to the employees that have been working for a company, 4 or 5 years that are already at $15 an hour? That can cause some really big issues for employers, right?
It really can. And the experience in those West Coast states that have been doing something like this the longest is that few of those people see a pay bump that corresponds to that huge hike in the minimum wage. Usually if they... Let's say it raises it to $15. If that other employee was already making under $20, they usually see a bump, but anything over than that usually doesn't. Yeah. And, there's already a war on work in our society. Yeah. I think this is part of that. If the experience in these other states that have been doing this was, people are making more money, everybody kept their job, they're able to better provide for their families, they're moving up the economic ladder instead of staying stuck at the bottom. If that had been the experience, if prices hadn't shot through the roof on essentials like groceries and gas and housing, if that had been the experience, then I'd say, okay, well, I guess we can vote yes. It's not that big a deal. It'll be a good thing. That has not been the experience in these other states that have been doing it for a while. There's a few states in the middle of the country here that have adopted it in the last 5 years or less. So Arkansas, Missouri, Nebraska, what those states did, because I see a lot of people compare State Question 832 to those states. Well, if they can do it and things haven't gone to hell there. None of those states have done anything as aggressive as what State Question 832 would do. State Question 832 literally brings California's minimum wage structure and imposes it on Oklahoma small businesses all over the state, including all throughout western Oklahoma. That is not what they have in Missouri and Arkansas.
So when it came to the medical marijuana thing and it passed and was just, it's been crazy, the proponents said, well, it's the legislators' fault. They never wanted to deal with this. People wanted this. They didn't write it. And we're hearing the same thing with minimum wage. Well, if the legislators would have done something, it wouldn't be all-encompassing like it is. They could have raised it to $9 and we'd never do this. But
the minimum wage is an arbitrary number set by government. Actual wages in Oklahoma are growing at a better clip than they are in the states that have adopted something like State Question 832. If the opposite were true, if those states were seeing wage growth better than ours, I'd say, well, maybe we should do what they're doing. Yeah. But the opposite is true. Oklahoma's wage growth is going better. We have, by most measurements, the lowest cost of living in America. We are, by most measurements, the most affordable state to live in America when you look at wages plus costs, and you get that equation for affordability, because that's what a lot of people are talking about right now in our country. Every state has seen big cost increases and price increases the last 6 years, starting during COVID. Everybody's seen that. But that doesn't mean that there's still some huge differences in what people are paying on the West Coast that have something like State Question 832 in place compared to what we are experiencing here in Oklahoma. We're all experiencing that here in Oklahoma, but it's so much worse in the states that have had something like State Question 832 in place.
Well, almost out of time. We're talking with Dave Bond and Rick Farmer about State Question 832, which is going to be on the June ballot. I know Harold and Heston, a few other people, they've had, kids or grandkids that are high school age. They're saying, Well, all their friends are saying, hey, this is going to be a great thing. I want to support that. Most of them probably won't vote, fortunately. But, you do hear younger people out there just thinking this is going to be the greatest thing in the world. Talk to the young people that think this could be a cool thing.
So I remember being that age. I remember my first job outside the home. It was slicing meat in an Albertsons deli in South Oklahoma City. Those are the kinds of jobs that go away and don't exist anymore when states adopt things like this on a statewide level, or some big cities have done it too, like New York City has done this. And it's those entry-level jobs that start going away. It's not the higher-paying jobs up the food chain. It's those entry-level stepping stone jobs that you need to work at first before you can start climbing that economic ladder. Fast food jobs, all sorts of other lower entry-level jobs, the type of stuff where employers are willing to take a chance on an unskilled, unexperienced teenager and say, sure, I need somebody to do this. It's a pretty simple job. It's not very complicated. It's some grunt work. Maybe, I was slicing meat and playing with sharp objects and dealing with really smelly cheese in that first job. Ideally, somebody's got to do that, but they can also do that in a factory with machines.
Yeah.
They don't have to employ somebody to slice that meat and slice that cheese and fry the chicken and do all those things. They don't have to pay people to clean the floors anymore. I was at a Quick Trip the other day, and they had one of those robotic cleaning things.
Wow.
There's several places I drive by every day on the way to work that have robotic things mowing the lawn.
Wait. Note to self, get
Christmas list.
Robot lawnmower
Christmas
for me.
list item for Todd. But that's just at some point employers have to make that decision. Is it more cost effective for me to employ a human to do that, even an unexperienced, untested, unskilled human, or a machine? The machine is becoming more economical with each passing day for that small business owner or that big business owner.
Yeah.
And those entry-level jobs are the ones that get cut. That's been the experience in the states that have been doing this for a while. There's no reason to think that we will not see the exact same thing in Oklahoma.
I think you're going to see that happen in the farming community as well.
Yeah.
Because you can buy machines to do things in the farming community. And a lot of high school kids, college kids, summer jobs, that first job is helping out on the farm.
Yes.
And the exemptions are going to be going to go away.
Yeah.
And the mandated salary is going to be such that the farmer is going to say, I'd rather, I wouldn't rather, but it just makes more economic sense to go down and buy another piece of equipment.
I've never seen a proposed law in Oklahoma that targets farmers and ranchers in this specific and direct and destructive way. These are long-standing protections for family farms and ranches all over our state that, poof, are gone if State Question 832 passes. What's the result of that? It makes them more vulnerable to get bought up by the big international corporate ag operations. That is exactly what is happening in those states on the West Coast that have done this.
Ask farmers how they're doing right now with the drought and prices up and everything. Now you add more wages into it.
Yep.
Scary stuff.
It is.
So you said, what is the bottom line? The bottom line is it never stops going up.
Yeah.
It's not $15. It doesn't start at $15. It reaches $15, and it continues to go up forever.
Yeah, it'll eventually hit $20, $25, and so on. I think the highest average right now in those West Coast states is somewhere between $24 and $25, and that's not just for those California fast food places, because they had a specific thing that went in place a couple of years ago. The highest stuff is actually in Washington State, which has a population much more similar to Oklahoma's. That's actually the highest averages now on the West Coast, and they're going to continue to go up year after year after year, and that's exactly what we will be putting in place if we pass 832.
Guys, vote no, June 16th. It doesn't matter who you vote for governor and all that stuff. I mean, that's what's getting all the headlines,
Sure.
all the AI-generated ads. But this is probably the most important thing you're going to vote on, State Question 832.
I agree, Todd. Thank you so much.
Dave Bond, Rick
Thank you.
Farmer.